Hey guys, what's good? It is September the 20th, 2025. It is Shane's World News Views podcast for the week. So, a lot of news this week. Like always, I'm going to have a lot of Charlie Kirk news. It may not be in exact order. I may be going back and forth because I'm taking the notes down, as the days go. I'm putting it in that order. So, I'll go back and forth with some stuff. I always say this if stuff seems a little scrambled at sometimes. If I'm, so that's the way it is. So let's start off with Charlie Kirk. So there's been many rallies, vigils everywhere. There was big ones in South Korea, London, the United States. They're doing them all over the world. So millions of people going out and honoring Charlie. There's still a lot of shit coming out on his shooting. Of course, you have the 22-year-old loser that's, accused of performing the act. But there's a lot of different videos, a lot of different angles from the shooting, making people think, could it have been somebody else? And this kid is being made to be the fall guy, him coming down from the roof and not, people not seeing a rifle, some saying it was in his pants, to then, it being, and it was broken down to it being fully assembled and found in the woods. There's a lot of shit that is scrambled here and just doesn't make sense. So, we'll see what comes about of it, but it's, I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens. But, for now, we got a 22-year-old suspect that's, has these text messages that he's telling his boyfriend that he committed the deed, that he shot him. And, I believe there's 7 charges now against Robinson, the shooter, and murder charge. He'll soon face the death penalty, I'm sure, in Utah. So a lot of stuff coming out of this. We'll see what happens. President Trump says that they'll put sanctions on Russia if NATO countries stop buying Russian oil. On to the next. The Teamsters Union is now pouring money into the Republican Party, into the GOP. And if people don't know what the Teamsters are, it's a labor union that represent workers in various industries, not just transportation benefits and health. And, the Teamsters notoriously were putting money into the Democrat Party. Now it's switching to the Republican Party. On to the next. Chip Roy, congressman from Texas. He's basically came out and said, this assault from the left on America, from the Democrats, that now he's looking into forming a special committee to investigate where they're getting all this money from. The Soros family, and I'm sure many others, but definitely worth investigating. I think I forgot to mention this last episode. President Trump, he actually went out in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago to eat seafood at Joe's Seafood Restaurant. And Marco Rubio was there, J.D. Vance was there. So, of course, when he was leaving the restaurant, he got heckled by these, these clowns, saying free Palestine and blah, 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 and whatever. But it was President Trump showing that the streets of D.C. are safe. He went out. He hadn't been out in D.C. in a restaurant in a while to eat. So this was his first time doing that. So that was pretty cool. On to the next. They're going to name a traffic circle in Israel after Charlie Kirk, calling it Charlie Kirk Square. So that's pretty cool. Netanyahu came out and said that, the president of Israel, and that's pretty cool. This clown Mamdani that's running for mayor of New York, he said if not Netanyahu shows his face in New York, if he is mayor, that he'll be arrested. For what? I don't know, but that's what he says. The Pentagon is suspending Colonel Scott Stevens, and this guy was mocking the Charlie Kirk death. Like, he was basically saying it serves him right, that he deserved it. And you got a lot of clowns like this doing the same thing all over the place. A lot of people are losing jobs from it. We'll speak about another one, Jimmy Kimmel, who's suspended from ABC Network, suspended Jimmy Kimmel, and the show is facing permanent cancellation. And this idiot got on and said, basically, well, the shooter is probably a Trump supporter and they're covering it up and blah, blah, blah. You can't promote hate speech, fake news on these networks. There is free speech, but when you're going on these networks and blatantly lying and causing hate speech, it's a different story. So ABC suspended them, and the show should be terminated. The ratings are awful. So yeah, Jimmy Kimmel, and then he came and he released a statement regarding Charlie Kirk when he died, and he said, can we just all forget about politics and let's just honor the life of, and that this was a tragedy that happened to Charlie Kirk. And then a few days later, he's on the air again making fucking lies. And again, I tell people, like, this is probably big money people that are coming at the network and coming at Kimmel and saying, look, just say this and get the Republicans stirred up, and we'll give you even more money for saying it, for saying dumb shit. So it's just fucking stupid. On to the next. Again, TMZ staff supposedly is being accused of cheering Charlie Kirk's death. This is just, I don't think it's all the TMZ staff. They didn't really say. They just said particular members of the TMZ staff that they were caught on camera doing this. It's fucking crazy. Iran, they want an Islamic NATO to fight Israel. So they want to form different cities, different, maybe even potentially different countries to fight Israel. I don't think that's going to work for them, but okay. On to the next. The House of Representatives passed a bill pushing politically motivated boycotts of Israel. Marsha Blackburn, she's a current senator for the state of Tennessee. She's going to be running for governor of Tennessee coming up here. Attacks on Venezuelan narcos. These are the idiots that are trying to kill our kids by bringing drugs into this country. There's, I think, a total of now 17 dead in the last few weeks on these, on our military taking out these narco idiots on these vessels, these ships that are trying to come into the United States. I think President Trump just announced there was 3 more killed overnight coming in on a ship trying to transport drugs. You just can't do this. We warn you, if you're going to keep coming in, trying to come into the United States, this is going to be what happens. You can't bring drugs into this country, period. On to the next. President Trump is going to meet with President Xi from China. They're going to keep TikTok going. I don't think it's a final agreement, like it has to be signed off on, but it will be final soon. And President Trump said he will go to China, I think at some point next year, and meet with Xi there. But he's also supposedly going to try to meet with him before then. They haven't announced where, but that's a good thing. I mean, I'm not on TikTok, but I mean, a lot of people are. And of course, there's always been the rumor of China stealing, United States citizen information off of there. I mean, I don't know. I just say, you know what, if President Trump thinks it's okay to keep it going, then I agree. On to the next. There was an ICE agent that was dragged by a car in Illinois, in Chicago, this past week. The ICE agent is okay, I think. I think he's just suffered some injuries. The driver was shot and is dead. That dragged him along. And this was just an illegal immigrant that was, they were trying to detain, and he did something stupid and he paid the price. Like they say, fuck around and find out. There was another illegal immigrant that beheaded his hotel manager in Dallas. The guy working at a hotel just decided it was okay to behead his hotel manager, so he was arrested. Wow, crazy. Vice President J.D. Vance, he hosted the Charlie Kirk show this week in Washington, D.C. to commemorate Charlie Kirk. So I thought that was a great thing. They're very close friends. There will be a celebration for Charlie Kirk's life tomorrow, a big celebration in Arizona, Glendale, Arizona, at the State Farm Stadium. So you're going to have a lot of people there. President Trump, Vice President Vance, a lot of supporters, a lot of family and friends, a lot of people. So President Trump is supposed to speak. So that should be a nice way to honor Charlie. And then there will be obviously a lot of Secret Service, like Super Bowl Secret Service at this event. So it'll be all over the stadium. On to the next. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican Congresswoman from Georgia. She basically said, we're going to have a national divorce between the Republican and Democrat mindsets, at least in Congress and the Senate, the way that these people are trying to mock Charlie Kirk's death, like there's no repair, she's basically saying. And I agree. You have too many clowns. The repair is getting rid of all these corrupted politicians and getting, good politicians in their spots. 2 were arrested in Utah for placing a bomb under a media van. Okay, more stupid shit. More stupid people doing stupid things. Town Commission. This is Fort Lauderdale news. I'm in Fort Lauderdale. Town Commission, Land by the Sea in Fort Lauderdale approved adding President Donald John Trump Drive for a portion of Sea Grape Drive in Fort Lauderdale. So that's awesome. Another honor to President Trump. Stephen Moran, he was sworn in as a member of the Board of Governors of the Fed Reserve System. Fani Willis, corrupted Fani Willis. She's disqualified from pursuing prosecution of President Donald Trump in Georgia. She lost an appeal. The courts there said, you're gone. There's nothing here to begin with. It's fake news. You're involved in all kinds of corrupt shit. Fani Willis is trash. She was, fucking this guy and, that she was working with. And, I mean, another corrupted politician that needs jail time, or she just needs, not politician, she just needs to be out of her position of trying to be a corrupted prosecutor. President Trump, he's asking Supreme Court to let him fire Lisa Cook from her Fed Reserve position. Of course, she's being accused of mortgage fraud. He did fire her. Judges put her back in her position. Now Trump wants her to be out, and for good, and he wants the Supreme Court to take care of it. We'll see what happens. On to the next. President Trump is investing $500 million into black and charter schools. That's a cool thing. The Daily Wire is donating $1 million to Turning Point USA in commemoration of Charlie Kirk. So that's a great thing. The Trump administration announced Operation at Large in Illinois, so that will be focusing on, getting out illegal immigrants. Kash Patel, FBI director, he was facing questions this week by the House Judiciary Committee about all kinds of stuff. Charlie Kirk, Epstein, all kinds of stuff. He was basically getting into shit with all the, the corrupted politicians that want to call him out that he's not doing his job correctly. So he was bashing Eric Swalwell. He was bashing Adam Shifty Schiff, saying he's the most corrupt politician, or the most corrupt, one of the most corrupt of all time. So Kash is doing a good job. Of course, people want to see more accountability. It's got to come. It's got to happen. So, and I'm sure it will. Netanyahu, again, we'll go back to Netanyahu. President of Israel there's this rumor that he offered $150 million to Charlie Kirk, which Charlie Kirk turned down to go even more pro-Israel. Whether that's true or not, nobody knows. And then there's the rumors that Israel also had something to do with his shooting. Netanyahu came out and said that's fake news. This is just all being put out there by, by bullshit sources. And Netanyahu is saying, of course, that, they want to just people want to create stories, and there's nothing to that, Israel loved Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was pro-Israel. Maybe Charlie Kirk wasn't about kids getting killed in, Iran. Okay, I understand, but that's what war does. I mean, unfortunately, people die, and kids die, and it's a bad thing. But Charlie Kirk was very outspoken on his support for Israel. So, President Trump, he was in the United Kingdom and England this week. He was visiting. You had King Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, Catherine, Princess of Wales. You had a bunch of people there. You had CEOs like Tim Cook that were at this dinner that they had, a banquet at Windsor Castle. President Trump, he made a snipe at Prince Harry, who was obviously not there, who said that he called Prince William III, Charles's remarkable son, without even mentioning Harry. So that people are saying that was like a diss at Harry without even mentioning him. There was also a bill signed with Prime Minister Keir Starmer of England, $1 billion deal, US and UK deal, tech prosperity deal which focuses heavily on AI investment, and it's going to create supposedly 15,000 jobs. So I think that's a positive thing. Bill Ackman, this guy is a hedge fund manager. He's a billionaire. He says he'll pay the reward of $1.2 million to Robinson's father that turned him in, the shooter of Charlie Kirk. So, okay. And Robert Redford, a legendary actor, died at 89 years old. He died in Sundance, Utah this week at his home. He was in great movies like The Natural, and he's, which was one of the best baseball movies of all time, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, among other big movies. I met Redford a couple times. He wasn't nice to me, but hey, it is what it is. And, sorry to hear that he passed away. On to the next. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. He says that he will look into, booting troops that have beards. He doesn't want any beards. So that's okay. Megyn Kelly, talk show host, she says she doesn't want to go to Israel for whatever reason. She said she's not going to go there, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with this pro-Israel stance, or showing her face there or whatever. So back on Israel again, we'll stick with it for a couple of statements. Bibi Netanyahu, again, the president of Israel, he's accusing China of funding anti-Israel propaganda. Let's see. What else do we have here? Boone Cutler, who was a former Army veteran. This guy was going around and doing a lot of speaking events. He was a pro-Republican guy, and spoke out on a lot of the truths and the corruptions going on. He passed away this week also. So on to the next. Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa. He exposed the Biden administration FBI for targeting nearly 100 Republican groups and individuals. Typical corrupt shit going on. So it needs to stop. RFK Jr., he had fired CDC Director Susan Monarch, and she was then questioned at the Senate this week regarding, it was a health committee hearing, so they were asking her a lot of the stuff about why she was fired and what RFK Jr. was demanding from the CDC. And of course, this is to do with vaccines and medicines. And of course, there's a lot of pollution in these things, and RFK Jr. is trying to clean it up. So this lady was obviously not behind it, and she deserved to be terminated from her position. Speaking of RFK Jr., there was bomb threats at his Georgetown residence in D.C. There was no explosives found. So this is the kind of shit that these people have to deal with on a daily basis, unfortunately. There was 5 officers shot this week in York County, Pennsylvania. 3 were killed. They were serving a warrant, and a shooter. The shooter was killed in this incident also, but they were just serving a warrant to this guy, and he went crazy. He shot 5 cops. Again, 3 are dead, unfortunately, but the shooter was also killed, which is a good thing. Ilhan Omar, congresswoman from Minnesota, she's another one that's been trashing Charlie Kirk, saying that he's promoted hate, blah, blah, blah. There was a, Nancy Mace was coming, she came with trying to vote her to be censored and lose her committee assignments in Congress. They voted 214-213 to not take her out of these, to not take her out of committee assignments, and she won't be censored. And there was 4 Republicans that actually voted against her being censored. Go figure. And Corey Mills, congressman from Florida, is one of them. That's disappointing. It would have, you're talking 1 vote, and 4 Republicans were responsible for her not being censored when she should be. She's trash. She's illegal. She's a criminal. That's all going to be found factual. She's trash. On to the next. New York judge, he dismissed terrorism charges against Luigi Mangione. This is the kid that killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, but the murder charge still stands, but the 2 counts of terrorism charges are dismissed. Okay, on to the next. President Trump, he named Antifa a terrorist organization. Obviously, these are these idiots that stand out there. They loot places, they rob people, they throw them down, they assault people. They're funded by losers like the Soroses and so many, I can't even, I'm sure the Soroses, that will be investigated and proven, but I'm sure several others, many others probably. So that's right to name them a terrorist group, because that's exactly what they are. They're bringing hate, helping bring hate and division. They're being paid off to do this shit too. An anonymous source is making allegations that Israeli agents placed electronic listening devices on Secret Service emergency response vehicles this year in 2025, and also supposedly did the same thing in 2019 in President Trump's last term. But this is just anonymous sources. President Trump, nobody of significance has said this, so I don't think that there's anything to this. On to the next. The Federal Reserve, they actually cut interest rates for the first time in 9 months, so that's a good thing. Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania, he's been coming out against the Democrats overall, saying that their hate stance is awful. They need to tone things down. They're creating too much division. So Senator Fetterman's actually doing good things for the Democratic Party. Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's wife, she was named the new CEO of Turning Point USA. So that's a great thing. National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk will be on October the 14th, which is his birthday, and the Senate and Congress both approved that, so that's a good thing, honoring Charlie. Kamala Harris, she has a book coming out, so she said she wanted Pete Buttigieg, who was the former Secretary of Transportation under the Biden administration, to be her vice president and not Tim Walz. So go figure. And she said, well, it would be too hard to have him in because he was a gay man and I was a black woman, and meanwhile she's Indian, but okay. Anyway, she lost and she got whipped in a fair election. There was 11 New York Democrats officials that were arrested for trying to gain access to ICE detention cells that are holding illegal immigrants. So fuck around and you find out. Rudy Giuliani was ordered by a New York judge that he must pay defense lawyers $1.4 million. He was Trump's main lawyer at the time, but I guess money that he owes to these other defense lawyers that wasn't paid. He says Rudy owes $1.4 million. Travis Decker, this is a killer, a guy who killed his 3 daughters in Washington. His remains were supposedly found in Washington. Not confirmed, but they're pretty sure it's him. I said I wouldn't name these losers, but at some instances I will name them. At some instances, a lot of instances, I will not name them to give their corrupted names more fame. But in this case, I will name him. So hopefully it was him, and he's a scumbag. So the U.S. Trump says the United States wants to reclaim Bagram Airfield, which is located in Afghanistan, from the Taliban. It was the largest U.S. air base at the time when the U.S. had control of it. So I think that's a positive thing. The Macrons, who are the first man and first lady of France, the president and his wife, they have scientific proof. They said that they will display to the United States that Bridget Macron is a woman, because there's a lot of shit accusing her of being a man. So we'll see what happens with that. The DOJ is charging 8 people on a large-scale scheme that defrauded the Minnesota Housing Stabilization Services Program, and it was millions intended to go to this program, which is for people with disabilities and experiencing homelessness. So figure how low and dirty that is. There's a government shutdown coming, possibly, of course, because the Republicans and Democrats just don't get along. And there's always money issues of what to fund and what not to fund and this and that. But then they never seem to have a shutdown, so we'll see what happens. But there's rumors that there's one coming. AOC is plotting a presidential run. That will fail. AOC, the corrupted congresswoman from New York City. The DOJ is seeking 30 years for the attempted killing of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. The suspect, who was a man at the time, is now saying he's a woman. Okay. The House passed a resolution to honor Charlie Kirk, 310 to 58. This was condemning political violence. And imagine you have 58 people that either voted against it or just no-showed in the court to vote yes, that they would approve it. It's sickening to basically not approve that, we're going to come up with a resolution that it's not okay to kill anybody, or politicians or anybody, and you have 58 people that are against that. That's amazing and sick and sad at the same time. Eric Siebert, Virginia prosecutor, U.S. attorney, he resigned after President Trump says he wanted him out of his position for not pursuing charges yet on Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, who is being accused of mortgage fraud, among many other things, including smearing President Donald Trump and trying to put him in jail, which did not work because she's a clown, and she will be held accountable for her crimes, guaranteed, in the future. President Trump announces a new visa program for the world's wealthy to encourage them to immigrate to the United States by offering residency permits for a hefty price tag. They could pay $1 million with a Trump Gold card and up to $5 million with a Trump Platinum card. Okay, see what happens with that. And the Trump administration approved $6.4 million weapon sale to Israel, and it needs congressional approval. Okay, so that was a lot of world news this week. Sports news, I don't have a ton. The Yankees, we're winding down baseball season. The playoffs is not official yet, but they look like they're pretty locked up. They're still in the division race. We'll see what happens. There's 8 games left. Football, the Raiders, my football team, they're 1-1. They're going into Washington this week. Hopefully they'll be 2-1. Nothing worthwhile to promote otherwise in either sport that I have to really put out there right now. Basketball, I forgot to mention Josh Giddey. He did re-sign with my Chicago Bulls, a 4-year contract. So it's good to have Josh Giddey back. Young guy, 22 years old. He's going to help the team out a lot going forward. And nothing else to report really in sports news. Well, Bud Crawford, he did defeat Canelo Alvarez last week in a big boxing match that was held at Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play in Las Vegas, Nevada. So good for Bud Crawford. I believe he's 42-0 right now. And that's it. That's a lot of news. We'll see you next week with more Shane's World News views. And until then, see ya.